This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 125 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network.
This is Reese Koffler-Stanfield from Georgetown, Kentucky.
And this is Philip Parks from Fergus, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show.
Hey, Philip, you are our producer today.
Yeah, again, I think people are getting a little bit used to the problems. At least our guests are getting used to the problems that happen when I'm the producer. But it's okay. We're doing all right.
We're doing fine. And I have to be honest, guys, we're recording early because we're going to the regional finals, and it is feeding time in my barn, and my office is right next to the stalls. So I apologize in advance if you hear a bunch of kicking horses, because that's feeding time here at our barn. But yeah, we've had a really busy day, Philip. We're getting ready. We leave for the regional finals tomorrow, and we're taking 5 horses, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think everyone is doing great, and we're really looking. Should be a good show.
I'm sure there's a lot of listeners this week, all pumped up and ready, and they want to know all the tips for showing really well, and how to go to regionals and kick Reese's butt. And
that's fine. Hey, if it's a listener, I'm taking one for the team. No, but I think we're really prepared. I feel really good about how every horse is doing. You know what's going on. I feel like we had a good sort of fall. We had a good spring, and then I usually take July and a bunch of August off because it's so hot here. I don't usually show those months. And then we had a show at the end of August, and then we had 2 weeks, and then a show at the horse park, and then a week off, and then now we're going to Chicago, and then everyone's going to get a break after that. But everyone's good. The last horse show went well, and we actually made a couple adjustments and went over a few things, and so I really, really feel like everyone sort of knows what they're doing, and hopefully it'll be a fun time. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, good luck to the Maple Crest Farm crew.
Thank you.
You guys. I know you're going to do well, and I can't wait to hear. And
we'll have a full report.
A full report from regionals and getting ready for nationals, which is next door. You lucky devil.
Yeah. Exactly. So I know, right? This is actually the first show besides Florida that we've traveled to, which poses, as we all know, interesting packing challenges. But also, I'm looking forward to it because we don't typically show out of Lexington, which is wonderful. But, you do kind of miss, going out to dinner and kind of being as a group. And,
you spend some time as a team, right? When you go away,
exactly.
Because you go away together. And, you certainly get that atmosphere when you guys go to Florida, because I've been there. I visited you guys, and, that's kind of fun. And, when you're at home, everybody goes home. Everybody sleeps in their own bed. There's just a little less. Just a little less of the camaraderie thing. So I think it's good for you. Good for you to get out of your, get out of your comfort zone. And
we will post a stall gating picture. I'm sure we'll let everybody see. All the ladies are working on the stall gating. So instead of tailgating, we'll stall gate. So that'll be really fun.
Could be a little dangerous, actually.
I know, right? Come if you're at the regionals, come see us for sure. So, Philip, you posted something very interesting on your Facebook page. And for all the ladies and gentlemen out there, we like to have the Philip and Meredith wedding update. So,
well, we're getting down to it now. I guess we're about 6 weeks away.
Are you getting nervous, Philip?
I'm not nervous. No, this doesn't make me nervous. It's going to be good. No, I just posted that we're having our Stag and Doe this weekend. And, some of these things don't occur to me. I think it's a bit of a Stag and Doe is a regional, small town Ontario thing, as far as I can tell. I don't know, where it stemmed from or what culture it's from, but when Reese, sends back a message like, "Oh, what the heck is that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, not everybody. Not everybody gets it." So it's kind of a cool thing. It's kind of my favorite part. Well, the wedding is fun, but the Stag and Doe is really fun. It's not a bachelorette thing. It's what happens is your wedding party hosts a party for the bride and groom, and so there's a hall rented, and so I think this is a little bit because not everybody gets invited to the wedding. We have to keep costs down, and so we're having just under 100 guests, and there's a ton of people we would love to invite, but it gets overwhelming, right? So what happens is you have this Stag and Doe, and basically it's also a party. It's people have it a month or 2 months prior to the wedding. And, we have a DJ, and there's food, and there's dancing, there's party games, there's a lot of games. And basically what it is it's a party, but it's also a fundraiser for the bride and groom. So it helps raise a little bit of money going towards the wedding costs, which are astronomical. I don't need to tell everybody that, but it's
anybody that's gotten married, it's ridiculous.
It is crazy. So this helps out with it. So there's a lot of there's a door charge, I guess, and then you make a little bit of money on the sale of beer and wine, and in the end, it's kind of like you get to have an extra party with all your friends and your family come, and pretty much everybody gets to come to this thing. And when you're in a small town, even people you don't really know come to it. Like it's like the entertainment. There's so in Elmira, kind of where I'm from, there's only one bar, and there's not a ton of people, and so even if you don't know the bride and groom, you just show up for the fundraiser, and it's fun. It's really, really, really fun. Yeah, and we have raffles, and you have prize draws, and like I said, games and stuff. So yeah, for anybody who has never been to one, you can come to mine. It's this weekend. We are very excited to come to the wedding, but I really wanted to come to this bad boy. Yeah, it's like the pre-party.
Yeah.
The wedding.
Well,
before
how
the wedding.
fun is that? Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you explained it to us on the air, because I really didn't know what it was, and I'm like, what is that? Is that I thought you were going on your bachelor party, is what I thought it was.
Oh, well,
and
we
Meredith
have that.
was
So
going,
there's another party to do with the bachelor party. And
how fun is this? Oh, I feel like I missed out.
Like we're not like Meredith is not having a shower because we much prefer the stag and dough than having a shower. So yeah, I mean it's a chance for like you don't bring a gift or anything. You just show up and.
Does everybody have a stag and dough, or is it just not everybody?
Pretty much everybody I know, except for people who are from like the big city of Toronto or that don't have it, and I don't know culturally how it works with different things. But I know like pretty much everybody I know has had a stag and dough, and it's an excuse to have a party.
Another party.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. Well, that is so exciting. Thank you for explaining that to us on air.
It's a non-horsey thing we can bring to the Dressage.
I know we can do Dressage radio show. Well, it's we're going to do a weekly Philip update on the wedding, because we all have been there, and it's such a wonderful time. But it is also stressful, and it's also stressful to have horses during this time. So, yeah, absolutely.
Well, we still got to ride. Still got I mean, still have lessons to do on Sunday. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, hopefully they'll take pity and then they'll bring you some coffee or something.
It'll be fine.
That's good. Hopefully it's not early in the morning for your teaching your lessons. But after this commercial break from our sponsor, we have a great show today. We have Hillary Moore Hebert, the senior editor from Dressage Today, is back for her segment. So after this commercial break, we will go to Hillary, and she's got lots of great tips for us this week.
Judy, I've been hearing a lot of good reports about this new TheraWool product line that you introduced earlier this year. Tell us what's going on there.
It's basically opened a whole new customer base for us, and it's made the product affordable for people maybe who either didn't want to use sheepskin because it does require a little bit more maintenance, the sheepskin does, than the wool, or people that just couldn't make that stretch. So it's been great. It's really, really durable, as the tagline says. Is great for daily use, beautiful enough for show.
And I think that really explains it all in a nutshell, because it is a lovely pad to look at and feel, but yet it's still an affordable pad that you can literally go to the Olympics in this saddle pad.
Yes. We worked really hard to make sure that we developed the right density and the right length. And so it took us about a year to get everything exactly right, and to make sure that when you washed it, that it didn't felt up or turn real hard or ball up. And it's a proprietary blend of product, the way we've done this to make it work.
Quality saddle pads from Fleeceworks. So, folks, when you go to your local tack store, ask for Fleeceworks TheraWool pads by name. And if your local tack store doesn't have them, tell them that they need to speak with Judy at Fleeceworks. Just go to fleeceworks.com and you'll find all of our contact information there. And thanks for stopping by again, Judy, and keeping us up to date on what's going on over there.
We had have Hillary Moore Hebert from Dressage Today. She is the senior editor, and she's here to do her monthly column, as we like to say, on Dressage Today and what's coming on in the magazine. Hillary, thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks.
We always love when you come on. It's our favorite segment of the month. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, thank you.
So Hillary, tell us, let's just get to it. What is going on in this month's Dressage Today magazine?
Okay, so we're talking about September, and we covered some tips last episode just with scheduling things, but I have pulled out 4 more tips for you guys from the magazine. And the first is from our tried and true clinic critiquer, Suzanne Bundy, who I just love to death. And she often, in addition to critiquing the riders, will offer great tips for everyone. And this month she had a really neat one. And it explains in how-to why it's important to ride with your thumbs up as opposed to turning your hands inward, more like some other disciplines sometimes do. And what she has everyone do, and you guys can do that as I'm describing it, is if you take your hands and start in riding position with your thumbs up, if you start to rotate your hands so your thumbs point towards each other, you may notice that your elbows start to go out and you start to round your shoulders and upper body a little bit. And she explains, she has a very diverse background in biomechanics, and she explains that our bodies use movement patterns in sort of a domino effect to activate chain reactions, and that the human body has 2 very commonly known patterns, and that's either stretching up or crouching down. And so what she says is that if you start one piece of that chain reaction from a crouching pattern or stretching up, you trigger the rest. And when you do that with your hands, where you rotate your thumbs inward towards each other, then you start to trigger the crouching down pattern, and that's why the rest of your body follows suit. So if you ride with your thumbs turned in, you'll be more likely to be incorrectly crouched. If you have them pointing up, you're triggering the chain reaction to be stretching up correctly. And I thought that was a really neat thing that no one had ever explained in such a clear way before.
Yeah, that's great. I was just doing it myself. I don't know, Philip, did you try?
Yeah, of course.
It's very true, actually. That's a great way. That is a super tip. I'm going to remember that because I even find myself doing that like I'm driving in the car and I'm not paying attention or I'm watching TV. And we all know that muscle patterns are important when it comes to riding. So just to sit up and put your thumbs up, that's a great tip for just even posture in general.
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard it explained in that way before, but obviously that's exactly what happens. I think, the thumbs being up or down in itself is not necessarily as important as, getting your elbow in and stretching your shoulders up. So, all these things, I mean, with your body, I mean, they're not independent of each other, are they? I mean, everything's all connected. And as soon as, I just did it right now. I mean, as soon as you turn your thumb over, everything else goes in a little bit in a worse way, and then, I think it, like you said, it just chain reacts through your entire, at least your upper body, to make it not what you want. I mean, this is. I mean, you see this every day when you're teaching, riders with their elbows turned out, the thumbs down, elbows out. Those things all go together, but it's great for riders to realize that this is why you have to keep the thumb up. Because, I mean, it locks your hand in the wrong way to put it down. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
I think, it's really neat. And you guys know, if you're frequent listeners, and the 2 of you guys know that I think above all other columns, I think if you really like this kind of how-to explanation for things that are pretty common, but you want to know like the newer science behind it, her column I think is really good to check out because she explains this type of thing for a lot of different types of aspects of riding in every month's issue. So it's really great if you like this kind of thing.
Love it. So how about tip number 2?
Okay. So Ray LaCroix has a great tip for students and teachers alike, And he says to provide context and clarity in your lessons, assign numerical values to the strength of you or your student aids and just generally anything that you might do in a lesson. So here would be an example is if you have a rider that has asymmetrical contact, just keeping with the theme of what we've been talking about so far today, assign a number between 1 and 10 of how much the contact feels like in each hand. And so the rider who thinks they're symmetrical when they're not will say maybe that they have a 2 in each hand. And so the best way to explain to them the asymmetry is to say to them with the weaker hand, can you make it a 5? And then when they feel a 5 and a 2, then what they'll feel is asymmetrical, but it will be truly symmetrical. And so then you can say at that point, okay, this is actually symmetry, and start to understand, how what you can feel might be different from the reality of things. And I think that applies to really almost everything that I can think of in terms of the aids or your position or whatever when you're riding in a lesson. And I thought it was a neat idea of, give a quantity to what you're talking about so that you can, use that as a baseline.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take on it, actually, because, I think one of the biggest discussions we have as trainers is how do you teach feel? Because what I feel and what Philip feels and what Hillary feels, what we all feel is different. So to be able to sort of assign a way to describe at least a piece of it, that's a really interesting way to think about it. What do you think, Philip?
Well, I kind of got this, when we started learning a little bit from Scott Hassler, because he uses a little bit that numerical thing for a lot of aspects of the riding, and so I tried to take that from his teaching, and this is a little bit of a different take, but I mean, you talk about using a dial, right? And when you're teaching someone, it's helpful to say, maybe for energy or for lengthening or something, to say, okay, I'd like you to kind of dial it up to 7, or if you really want the horse to go, kind of go to 10, right? And I think that's a little bit the same thing, trying to use numbers to describe, what exactly you want. So I think this is another thing right along with that to say, how heavy is the horse? Well, you don't have to say 2 pounds, 4 pounds. You just have to kind of assign a scale and then go from there. And I think that helps the rider to understand and to just make the communication between coach and rider better. And I think any kind of tip that can help with that is a great one. So this is nice because we don't always, you don't get a lot of tips on how to teach, right? And for us as trainers, I mean, we teach from, the examples that we've had in our lives and from the coaches that we've had, that we don't go to school for it, right? So, the more things that can, bringing a little better education to coaches, I think is great.
And I think, it's interesting that you said that because it reminds me of an article we did last year with Shauna Harding, because she does the same thing training horses, where she thinks about riding the horses for a 6 when she first is training them, and then she increases it to a 7, and then she has a time when they're ready for it to ride for a 10, when they're competent and strong enough. And I think that it's interesting because it seems like if you take Ray's concept, Scott's concept, and Shauna's concept, you can really think about how you can use that, scale of things from 1 to 10 and how you can explain to people, for example, in the trot lengthening, you right now are riding for a 9 and your horse is only strong enough to handle a 7. You can't push that much because you're actually, going beyond his strength. And as a result, you will earn a 5 in the show ring. And I think, it's really neat to think about those things because I think it's much more understandable to people than just saying, oh, right now you're pushing too hard, or that is good, or that is not good,
No, absolutely. I think that's a really good way to do it. I mean, I love the idea of the dial, and I love the way of you can't always ride for the 10. I mean, I think we all strive to ride for the 10, but there's some times where your horses are tired or whatever, coming right after a horse show or even leading up to a horse show, that you have to be able to like Shauna was saying, maybe ride for the 6 one day and be okay with 6. And then the next day you go for 7. So I think those are all really, really interesting ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, great. I love that one. Hillary, what's our next one?
Okay, so then on the other side, I think that this is a nice transition into this. Our transitions column that we have, we had a submission from Amy Tolnish, and I think it's a great piece of advice because I think we get into sort of the serious training and thinking about how this is a sport and amateurs compete against professionals, and so everyone gets really intense. And she had a great piece of advice for anxious riders, not just people who are nervous, but also I think people who have uncertainty. And she says, give yourself a break, and that for the majority of this sport, most people do this as a hobby, not a job. And we have to remember that hobbies are fun. And she makes a really good point. She says that, say you're afraid of cantering, this being able to canter really make you a better person or a better rider. And her answer is absolutely not. And I think that that's really worthwhile to think about because I think we can get very focused on goal setting, which I think in its place is good to do, but you can kind of get so intense in type A that you forget about the fact that what you're doing is having fun and making sure that where you're setting your goals has to go in that direction. It doesn't necessarily have to be constantly about, progressing and winning and achieving all the time.
Yeah, I think that's just great advice. I think for all of us, it is all of our jobs in one capacity, to do that. So, it is different when you talk to a professional rider. We're always, on some level on display or always teaching and always learning and that type of thing. But it is true. I mean, I have my own horse that there's some days I'm just taking him on a hack because that's what I want to do. And, you know what I mean? And he's great and he's doing super. And so it is what and in that case, but it is true. And just because you have a bad ride, it's hard, especially when you're a trainer, you at least have maybe 5 or 6 more. So at some point, your law of averages, someone's probably going to be good that day. But if you know what I mean?
Someone's going to be good that day.
Somebody's going to have a good day. Please, somebody be good. But, there are times when I've been away training and maybe I only have 1 or 2 horses and it's really, you have a bad ride and your whole day just, it's really hard versus when you're, when I'm home and I have all my horses, I had a bad ride on that horse. I maybe think about it for a few minutes and then I move on. But when you don't have that type of volume, it is hard to do that. So it's just something that I sometimes have to really watch my balance when I'm away and don't have all the horses that I ride now. Philip, how about you? Hillary, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think too that if you do enjoy showing, that puts a lot more pressure on. People say, the reason that professionals have sometimes an easier time at the shows is because it's just another day at the office. But I think it's more than that. I think it's not only that there are so many shows that it is just another show, but also when you are riding 3 or 4 horses at whether it's a show or at home and you mess up, a line of your leg yield, then it doesn't matter. You can sort of say, whatever, I'll go and I'll do it on 3 other horses and I'll have confidence there. I think it's hard sometimes when you are riding just the 1 horse. I really applaud people for having 1 horse and continuing on when you do have hard times like that, because it does mess with your confidence sometimes because, it's your one shot. And I think you just need to keep on keeping on and you realize you work through it. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, it can really hit you when that's your one chance to get it right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have to constantly be taking a step back, especially when I'm teaching or, a lot of times when I'm riding my own horse or one of the horses that I'm riding and things don't go super well, I can shake it off more easily myself than I can when a lesson doesn't go right, because I just, I get so kind of motivated into doing something and getting something right that it becomes, very intense, and so, and I think at this point, like, a lot of my students know me and know, not to take it personally, but sometimes halfway through I just need to take a break and say, okay, step back step out of yourself for a moment, and just, take the perspective of the rider who's in the lesson at the moment, that they're doing it for fun. Like, for me, it's fun to teach, and it's fun to ride, and it's fun to learn, and it's fun to show, but it is, my passion, and sometimes that passion comes out pretty strongly. So it's good for everyone just to say, let's just take a break, or let's go at this next week, or let's have an easier week, or whatever, just so that the whole thing doesn't get snowballed into, especially when there is a problem, to just that the timeline can be as short and as long as you want to fix the issue, right? And sometimes longer is better. So this is a very good tip, and just to say, horses isn't everything, and there's a lot more goals in your life you can work on and achieve. So good tip.
So I could not have planned this transition any better, because Louise Robson talks about the red zone, which is exactly what you were just talking about, where it's a moment in your horse's training where he is overwhelmed, scared, or confused, and he needs to take a break.
Yeah, well, I think we've all hit this.
So she explains this and says that if you hit the red zone, that your horse is overwhelmed, scared, or confused, that her tip is to do a walk break, do a stretchy trot, or ride a forward canter, just based on how your horse would best react. So if he tends to kind of, run around and does really well with a walk break, then go ahead and do that. If he would just, get distracted and that wouldn't help, then focus on maybe a more forward gait. But I thought that was really interesting. And I thought what was most interesting is that I'm wrapping up a training article with Jan Brink for our November issue. And he references the same kind of thing, but he calls it the panic zone. And he has the same kind of concept where you want to make sure that you're always pushing your horse to stretch in his training, but never putting him in a panic zone, because then he won't truly learn, he loses relaxation, and he won't progress in his work. So I thought it was interesting that there's this common concept that I think a lot of us obviously use because we don't push our horse past the point of comfort. But I thought it was really interesting and wanted to hear your thoughts, because we don't really have a common term for it.
No, we don't. And I think either panic zone or red zone, I think we all kind of have been there, where you're like, oh, I just maybe did something that was too much for this horse that day, for whatever reason. And you need to take a step back. I will never forget when I was in Germany, I learned this. It was one afternoon, it was kind of late, and there was a girl that would come and ride one horse, and it was a Grand Prix horse, and the horse was incredibly talented. Well, that horse, though, you could see he'd either push her to that red zone or the panic zone, or it was hard to know who was there. It was the rider that was just getting frustrated, or if the horse was just getting stressed. Well, I saw her just get off one day. She got off, she sat down on the bench, she held the horse, and she just took 5 minutes. And I really watched that, and I remember that day and remembered, like, that's something to always remember. We can all get to that point, and that's the point you do. You either need to take a walk break, extended canter, whatever you need to do. Or in this girl's case, she got off for a few minutes and just took a deep breath. Whatever she just sat there, just didn't do anything. And I thought, okay, that's something to always remember. So hopefully it doesn't get to that point that you need to get off. But, and then I think it's always good and important when you hit that red zone or panic zone that you need to go back and think about it. I mean, that's the time to really go back and say, okay, what did I do here? And does that make sense? Just kind of reevaluate it and say, okay, maybe that Piaffe and Passage transition, maybe that was too much for today, or maybe my horse isn't strong enough and I need to work on strength. I think that's the time that you need to step back and think, because you are the rider's the thinking being, really, and you need to step back and say, okay, let's not get into this zone again. And what are some things that I could do differently? So that's what I do when I get into that place, and certainly we all do. We never want to push our horses too hard, but sometimes you hit that when you're not ready to hit it, or you hit it by accident, or however. So those are some of my experiences. I personally just try to go to walk, regroup and rally, and then go back and do what I was doing, or maybe reevaluate at that point. Philip, how about yourself?
Well, I mean, like you said, we really never kind of intentionally go there, but sometimes it happens in the training and whatever. And whenever the horse is scared, you can't feed into that, right? Like you said, like we're the ones with the brain; they have the walnut brain, so it's not really their fault when they go there. And whenever if it happens, then what I do is just little stretch trot or walk, and then the session is done. I won't even go back to training, whatever it was. That's where I said, like, you can extend the timeline a little bit of, if you're trying to train Piaffe or Passage, this is where it happens the most when we're collecting the horse, because you're putting the horse in a smaller box, adding the energy, putting all this stuff together, and in my experience, that's when it happens, right? Not normally a first level horse or a training level horse really gets into this panic situation. So then the session is done for the day, and just I'll come back at it tomorrow and figure out a different way to do it, because I think the horses have to enjoy their work, and definitely if that's a situation, that's not a good place to go, and you don't want to reinforce that. So yeah, use your brain and train well, and train correctly, and train for the horse's happiness, for sure. So yeah, stay out of the panic zone.
Well, and I think it's interesting as you guys were talking about that, because we have very bad traffic in the DC area. In case you have never had the privilege of visiting the area, but it's horrible. So it's very common for people to come out of work or just traveling between places where they have been sitting in really horrendous traffic, and their job is stressful, and they get out to the barn and they're running a little bit late, and they want to get home in time so that it isn't an 18-hour day. And I think that the best riders really have a knack for figuring out how to spend a little bit more time when they get to the barn to relax and unwind, so that they aren't in their own red zone when they get right on the horse. And I thought, Reese, your point of taking some time to get off is that same sort of idea, just whether it's just taking a deep breath, currying your horse for a little bit longer, doing a longer warm-up walk, just so you can get in the correct zone before you even start, so you aren't like, okay, I'm going to pick my horse up, I'm going to run through the test, it's going to be perfect, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and kind of having this agenda within this time frame. I think you can push too much, and I think the idea of staying relaxed, staying focused, and pushing yourself in a healthy way, but, like Philip, what you were saying with Scott, like making sure that you dial it back a little bit if you need to, I think are all really good tips in terms of thinking about how to handle the mental side of the ride.
Absolutely. Great tips. Well, Hillary, as always, we love when you come on the show. How do our listeners find you on the internet?
You can check us out at dressagetoday.com, and you can both subscribe to the print and digital edition there. And then don't forget to check us out on social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And the one thing that I did want to mention that's extra cool is we're covering Dressage at Devon with a big social media program that Purina is helping us with. And if you go on our social media sites, we have a lot of cool photos and exclusive coverage of stuff. And we have some videos, and the newest one that's going to be coming up soon is of Boyd and Silva Martin talking about how they're preparing for the show. So check that stuff out.
Excellent. Well, we can't wait for next month.
Okay, I will talk to you guys soon.
Glenn the Geek here. The life of horse person is hard enough, and we all hate doing the required paperwork, and unfortunately many of us never get around to it, and it just piles up on our desk. That is about to change thanks to the EquiSketch Records app for your iPhone or iPad. My wife and I use it to track our horses, and we absolutely love this thing. EquiSketch Records is the most thorough and complete equestrian records app on the market today. We love this app because you can track your farrier work, your dental, your coggins, medicines, worming, and so much more. And you can get reminders on your device when all of these things are due. You'll never forget a worming or shots or farrier visit again. But it not only tracks your horse, you can also manage your horse shows, including individual events. You can manage riders, including lessons and memberships, and so much more. And you can sync it between your iPhone and your iPad, and all of this for the price of a couple of cups of coffee from Starbucks. Search for EquiSketch Records in the iOS App Store or go to equisketch.com. That's EquiSketch.com. equisketch.com.
Well, as always, Hillary does such a fabulous job, and it's really one of my favorite segments.
I love that segment.
We do every month.
We talk about
love
all
it.
kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And, it's like a condensed version of 5 shows all in one, right? We get
I know.
like 4 or 5 tips, so it's fun. Yeah, it's great.
It's fun. And then I go and then I just got my magazine yesterday. So I like to talk to Hillary and then I like to go to the magazine and kind of re-look at everything. So love her. So thank you for coming on. We have Kathy Priest from Woodspring Farm talking about the mare. She was reserve champion in the developing Grand Prix at the Markel Young Horse Finals. So she's got lots of great tips on how we get ready for several different big shows in a season. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce Kathy Priest from Woodspring Farm in Versailles, Kentucky. Kathy, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
We're really excited. Well, you are my neighbor and friend, and I was so excited to hear how well you did with the mare that I just adore, Wild Dancer. You were second and reserve champion overall at the developing Grand Prix at the Markel Young Horse Finals, correct?
Right, that's right. And she actually was second in the I2, and she won the developing Grand Prix, but then was reserve champion overall.
Wow. Well, I just love this mare. So can tell us a little bit about her, Kathy?
Okay. Well, she is a mare that I bought as a coming 6-year-old. I owned her originally with my business partner in Holland, and then a year or so down the road, we sort of traded out interest of another horse I had there. So I now own full interest in her and have for the last several years, I think. And she's been a horse that when I got her, our business agreement was that, I didn't have to sell her quick as a sale horse. I could keep her and train her along. And, once you do that, you start really liking your training and they start doing well for you, then, you really don't want to sell them, especially when you feel, for me, for a professional, it's so hard to find a Grand Prix horse or, a Grand Prix prospect that when you feel like that piece is coming on and it's in there, then you don't want to part with it. So fortunately for me, he and I swapped halves of 2 horses, and I, have the full ownership of her, and therefore, I don't really have to answer to anybody but me, and I don't have to sell her. So, that's nice because, at this point in time, I've had people ask me if I would sell her, and, and I don't want to do that. This is, sort of my chance, and that's what I want to continue doing with. So she and I have had a relationship. She's 10 years old this year, so we've had a relationship for 4 years. And when she came, she was basically, I don't know, maybe like second level-ish. She didn't have a flying change then. And so she's progressed, quite well through the years. And she's also been a little bit interesting show ring-wise because she is a mare and she is hot and electric. So that's been a learning curve with her. So that's a little bit about her, and I'm happy to have her.
Yes, and you guys are a great team. I've seen you in person and a wonderful, wonderful horse. So, Kathy,
thank you.
We had a question for you, and as a trainer tip, a lot of us are going to regional finals this week, and then hopefully we'll all make it to the national finals, and it will be very packed here in Lexington in November.
Right.
My question for you, though, is how it's very tricky because you had to have this mare sort of peak at the young horse developing horse finals in August, and we go back to Lamplight this week for the regional finals. And then we got to peak again in November, hopefully, fingers crossed, that we all get to the national finals. So can you talk to us, how do you do that? And some things that you've done well and things maybe, as we all know, sometimes we've not done things well. So can you talk a little bit about that as your trainer tip?
Sure, absolutely. You know, every horse is different, and I think mares in themselves are a little bit unique, especially when they're such, you know, goers and triers. They can sometimes make life a little bit harder on their body than they need to. Geldings sometimes are the same way. I have a gelding that's also showing the FEI, and he's really not so much like that. You know, he's kind of super straightforward, does his job. You know, he's just a whole different personality than say like this mare is. And my own personal mistake that I made this winter, I feel that was a big learning curve for me with the mare, is by the end of the Florida season, you know, I sort of had in my mind that I would keep training for the Grand Prix, but I'd have a nice season showing the CDIs and the small tour, St. George, I won. And really by the end of the season, I just had her like over the top. She, you know, was just not good in the ring. She was way too tense, way too hot. You know, and I think a combination of that was also thinking, you know, okay, I want to keep training on the Grand Prix. I want to keep working everything that I need to have that, you know, and then I would like back down a little bit and show the St. George and I won. That did not work. And, you know, going to the big shows like that, I put her in too much of a pressure cooker. So that was for me a real learning curve, and I think probably the thing I have to tell myself with this particular horse, less is more. Less is more. And so this summer, I just sort of told myself, I had a few shows lined up, but I came home and, you know, she got a break and, you know, you're back out in your pastures and you're in your own bed, so to speak, and did lots of walking in the hills and that sort of thing. And then as I brought her back in mind that, you know, okay, the small tour's over. I'm not doing any more of that. And let's just keep training toward the Grand Prix in a quiet way and show and see what I've got. So I felt like, well, you know, it really feels pretty good at this point. I'll go try qualifier, and if I get a 65 or above, then I'll go do the second one because, as you know, you have to have 2 qualifiers. And I wasn't ready early in the year, like in Florida. So I went to the first one, and I got a 65. And I thought, well, great. And so I had to immediately find another qualifier, and I think that one was maybe like several weeks later. And these qualifiers were sort of a distance away. Maybe one of them was in, I think, Lexington, Virginia. Yeah. So that's quite a distance. And then the second one I could do was in Chicago, so I had to travel for that one. And in between, I gave her lots of breaks. And then I also find with her, in my daily work, if I do some work, I walk. I do some work, I walk. I probably do more walking than with her than I do any other horses because it just relaxes her. And she's easy to get more fired up the longer she goes. So the learning piece, the peaking one is, you know, they have to train comfortably, they have to train calmly, and they don't have to train everything every day. They can, you know, they can have days off. They can walk in the hills 3 days a week. So for me, that was a learning curve and a way to balance her and her showing and sort of a little bit her show nerves, so that she's successful showing and relaxed in the ring. And this year she's been quite relaxed in the ring, and that's been a really great feeling. So I feel like that piece I'm on the right track with her. And, you know, you never know. I mean, like you say, we're going to a show this weekend, and we'll see how we do. On a daily basis, she's really training well and feel good in her body.
Well, I think the real
So
message
I don't
here.
know.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Does that kind of answer? I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm a little bit of a type A personality, so for me, I can train. I mean, I can ride all day long. But that wasn't the best way with her.
That wasn't going to work. Yeah.
No, it doesn't work. And I know, knowing I had this other show when I came back from the Young Horse Grand Prix, we were 4 days there because you showed a day and then you had a day off, which you trained that day, and then you showed a day and you were there the day before. So we really had 4 sort of intense days. And when I came home, she got an entire week off of just, turn out in the paddock. I backed her grain down. I maybe tack walked her toward the end of the week a couple of days, and then went back to work on the following Monday or something, and just eased her back into it. And now she's working full speed and ready to go to the horse show.
Yeah, well,
And
I was going to
she
say
didn't-
the message is a little bit about know your horse, because there's no blueprint for every horse, and you've got to kind of figure out your own plan and follow a path, stick to it for a while until it doesn't really work, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think also you have to trust your training. And, you can't be afraid to back off and say, oh, my God, if I back off, is she still going to do 15 one-tempies when I get back on a week later? Yes, she is. She did. It was fine. So that piece of it, you have to make yourself a little bit let go and then try it. And I don't know, it's worked for her. So.
No, I think that's so true. And I think, the week of the horse show, in theory, you shouldn't enter the horse show if you're not ready to go to the horse show when you enter. And that's my opinion. If you can't do it, don't go. Don't spend your money. Wait.
Right.
Obviously problems come up all the time, but a week before, in this case, a regional or a big final, it's really not the time. You kind of got what you got at this point.
Yeah, you're not going to make any big changes. Otherwise, you might mess everything up, right?
Right.
No, yeah. And, you just keep trying. For me, I keep trying to improve the quality of, the piaffe and passage, because that is one of the most important pieces in the Grand Prix. And as a young Grand Prix horse, you're always striving to improve that. But in the same light, you kind of can't fry them as you're trying to improve that. You have to be happy with little steps, and for me, I'm finding I'm being much more gracious and patient about those little steps than I have been in the past.
And I think some of this is confidence. As confidence, and you said it, confidence in your own training. That the horse knows their job. So have confidence and say, we're okay to step back here, or we're okay to let her go, have a little bit of a break, because you can't ride her. Like you said, you had 4 intense days at the horse show. She had to come back home and have a little bit of a break, or, that's how horses get broken, really. They need mentally or physically. So, I think that's
exactly. And, that show was really a very tiring show. I mean, I felt like she was very tired for the first couple of days when we came back. And then, by a week later, she's back on her toes. So it's, you kind of live and learn, and you have to let them tell you, and then you have to be smart enough to listen.
I think that's fabulous advice. So, Kathy, how do people find you on the internet?
I have a website. It's called woodspringfarm.com. It's, and I also have a email address of woodspringfarm@gmail.com. And on my website is, our contact info and, kind of pictures of the farm and what we do. And I have a nice sponsor page. I'm fortunate enough to have several good sponsors. So that's all there and available on the website.
Great. Perfect. Well, thanks, Kathy, so much. And we look forward to talking to you on your journey to the national finals. So fingers crossed for you guys.
All right. Fingers crossed for all of us.
Well, what a great discussion with Kathy about, about getting a horse ready for each individual different show and how to make them peak at the right time. And, I love to have these kind of discussions because you learn a little something every time you talk to somebody different about this. So it's nice to have all different kind of trainer tips and all different trainers come on the show. I think it's really fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed.
Well, this week our Facebook page did get a little bit of love.
Yay!
A listener, her name is Elizabeth, wrote on the page, and she says, "Hi guys, love your show," and she just discovered it. So a new listener. We love getting new listeners and bringing people onto the show, and sometimes we talk to them. And she said, "Would love some tips about fitting nosebands and bits of different types," and she's busy catching up on old episodes. So, we have talked about bits before and a little bit of tack. We try and have some tack segments. So, maybe we'll have another bit or noseband fitting expert come on the show and talk to us about that. That would be great. And, to all of our regular listeners, I think we've had lots of tips. So go back through the episodes and you can check it out on the internet. They're all still there and you can listen to them and, get up to date on things that we've already talked about, and then send us suggestions for new episodes. We'd love to hear what you guys want to talk about, right?
Yeah, we love listener love, but I really like this noseband question. I think that I don't think we haven't talked directly about nosebands, and they are something that are really interesting and can be. You can play around with them a little bit, and always I can learn more about tack. So I think we all can. So we will get on that. We will work on a noseband expert for sure. So Philip, another great show, and you can find our show notes and links to today's guests on our website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search for the Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter @Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
You can find me at philipparksequestrian.com. My email is philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week for allowing us to put on another great show, and don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we'll talk to you next week.